We'll go ahead and get started. So this is a webinar for Getting the Picture 2026. We got a few of us here from the IGIO, myself, Ben Grubbs, Andrea Harper, Sean Scholler, and then Kathy Kozinski from GENI.
Yep.
Yes, we'll
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we'll go a little bit over just the program in general and what it is. We're going to talk about remote sensing. Why is this important? How is the imagery gathered? We have a few slides talking about the process and also the program in general. It's a 4-year cycle. We'll talk about the timeline and also a little bit about the conditions that we need on the ground in order to collect imagery. Anyone want to add anything there?
Nope.
Cool. So I added these slides on here kind of to show a difference as to why we collect it this way rather than pulling from Google Imagery, for example. Google Imagery shows the vegetation and you get a lot of shadows that sometimes block features on the ground. The way we collect our imagery, there's no vegetation because we do it during the winter. And we take into consideration weather conditions so that we're collecting as clear of an image as possible. And this one on the right, 3-inch, is what our resolution will look like this year. It's pretty clear.
Isn't that amazing? That is amazing.
Yeah, I always like to point out on the left slide, with the Google Imagery that we don't know the date, and oftentimes that's very helpful for folks, especially when dealing with any legal issues or compliance issues within state agencies and local government. So
interesting.
I think these are some of Kathy's slides, right?
Yep, I like these. I like to talk about, we've been doing remote sensing, or remote means when you're a distance away from something, just as if you might be doing a telephoto lens, taking a picture of some bear cubs when you're out hiking in Yellowstone. That's remote. Also, so remote has been happening for a long time, sketching, observing, but in terms of modern remote collection of imagery, I like this photograph from James Wallace Black in 1860, and he was in a hot air balloon flying over Boston and took that first aerial imagery. So that, I just think that's great. And then actually a couple years before that, a gentleman in France, I don't want to pronounce his name incorrectly, and he was in Paris, France, tethered in a hot air balloon, and he was actually tethered to the ground, but he was up in the hot air balloon and took a picture of Paris. So it's fun to learn a little bit about that history for K through 12 people, maybe some librarians, after school education programs. Those are really fun things to talk about. Where did we come from? How did we get to where we are today? And what is remote sensing going to look like in the future? Because some of this hardware is amazing. And the kids, that's their future, being able to understand some of those technologies, as well as satellite imagery, things that happen on Mars, on the moon, space industry. Those are remote kinds of opportunities that the students can get involved with. A couple of the photos I like to talk about, just to the right, if you keep scrolling, you see the little orange kind of rectangle. That's actually a remote sensing camera that is for water. So it might skim along the top of a water, whether you're in the ocean, a lake, a creek, a river, and it's able to remotely sense the terrain at the bottom of that body of water. Of course, we all know about drones, and all that technology is changing. A lot of our remote imagery today is happening by drones, and some of these drones that are being envisioned by the folks developing and working on those things, they're very, very neat looking. And I like to look at a couple of these other images, the green and brown, where you see a date 2021. And on the underneath that, that's in the Amazon, somewhere in Brazil, and that date was 1994, and then compared to 2021, and then significantly even more developed property and farming and agriculture. So they're getting rid of our rainforests, and you know, pros and cons. How do we balance the human and the environment? And then Earth is Art. I just love satellite imagery. So that's a nice way. There's a couple of art teachers in Northern Indiana who do some really cool activities with some of their special needs students, and then their traditional kind of students with art, but using remote sensing imagery. Down to the bottom left corner, this image, it's a little bit older, but it shows roughly what happens during collection of some of this remote sensing data. And I think, Sean, are you going to talk about that, or Ben, or somebody in a little bit? Because you guys have a couple better photos than I do.
Yeah.
But it looks, I mean, it's just a very interesting technology. It involves a lot of math and, of course, really cool cameras and software. The center image land cover 2021 from IndianaMap, which is one of our state's most amazing resources. And this obviously shows land cover, and that's a different perspective, right? So a lot of imagery's adjusted so that we see color that's a human eye. So we all think that water should be blue, right? And vegetation should be green. But on a lot of the remote sensing imagery, vegetation is reflected as red, and that has to do with the electromagnetic spectrum. So there's another fun thing to talk about with your students. So Landsat, satellite imagery, and all kinds of applications for all of these remote sensing images. Weather is one of my favorites. Okay, thanks, Dan.
So we have this slide, why participate? Why get involved in our imagery program? Well, it's a really unique opportunity to create something that could be captured in our imagery and it'll live in there forever. There's a ton of opportunity here with what you can create. And we have a few slides, I think, after this with some ideas and inspiration. Are there any specific things on here you wanted to highlight, Kathy?
I wanted to really talk about, I mean, how to get involved. There's, you know, language here on this slide, but really it's about making a decision. Do you want your school or your library or your organization? There's several organizations that want to have like maybe a rollout image of their company logo or something to be captured. But it takes a little thought and preparedness, because it might take a little while for you to say you want to paint a mascot onto a playground or a parking lot at the public library. I don't, however that works out. And it might take a while to paint and to do that before. So thinking about when might the aircraft come over my area and how long will it take me to get some things done. There have been a lot of different pieces of art, we call it artwork, that have been done that that I think we can talk about, and are very doable. Things don't have to always be complicated. And also the educational opportunities. I really love talking about perspective and pixels and distance. And so you can bring in a lot of math, and students really get the word pixel, right? Everybody should get the word pixel now. What is a pixel? What does that really mean in today's language? So talk about those things, tie it right into math. So you're connecting several disciplines across the curriculum. Art, of course, to me is a great way to do this, but you talk about scale. So some students might create a piece of art, or a team of students on a sketch pad. And how do you scale that up if that's something that the school wants to support? Color theory, you mentioned that. I think that's it.
I would just reiterate that we're trying this year to be very flexible with,
Yeah.
you know, how we encourage folks to participate. So whether you have an existing landmark in your area that you think is just interesting, that you would just like to see in the high resolution imagery, or if you want to construct something or paint something, the options are pretty much whatever you want them to be.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that if you are creating something, try to have it last a long time and be weather resistant.
Yes.
Yeah, so the flights are probably going to start any day now, I imagine. And it could go up until end of April, May. So something that could last a few months isn't going to be, you know, gone in a few days after you make it. Is definitely I think probably the best advice we can give.
And please reach out if you have questions or you need some help brainstorming.
We all have lots of ideas. There's,
Okay.
but it has to be what is the idea to support you and what your wishes are. A few examples of some art installations that some places have done before are really raised bed gardens. You see in the top left-hand picture, just some raised bed gardens, and the students kind of developed that, and that was, you know, that's not really too complicated. You could always, in those gardens, put letters with out of recycled plastic or create numbers or something, a message, if that's something that you're into. And think about it, it's 3-inch resolution. So even some smaller pieces of plastic that might come into a shape or create a design will show up really well.
Yeah, Kathy, you bring up a good point. The size of, you know, that 3-inch imagery, basically the you know, for the eye to start discerning with the resolution, an object needs to be at least about twice the size of the pixel. So that's kind of the minimum size to think of, you know, trying to lay out an object or something that would be detectable and, you know, identifiable, right?
And what does that, can you, Sean, does that, are any kind of a actual, like a foot?
Yeah. So if it's a letter, probably, you know, a foot size lettering at a minimum would be, you know, ample size. If always, you know, you can always go bigger, right? But
Right.
but that minimal size, yeah,
I
would
hope.
be around a foot to maybe 9 inches
Okay.
in size.
Okay. There's now the picture on the left center, that is at the Wellfield Botanical Gardens up in Elkhart. So I mean, the building's not there, but I like the way they put in that trail. There's kind of that curly response, and it takes users out into part of that landscape. And I thought that was very well done. There are some other things, the circle of benches, recycled benches somebody put in. And I have an art teacher friend who they've put in several, her art class, so they're middle school students. They've done several art installations around the school property, and a couple of them are designed to be more large scale, like these benches to sit down. St. Patrick's Park, which is in northern Indiana. Years ago, they've planted bushes and they maintain those bushes to spell out the name of the park. So you could do that. Students could plant bushes, even small scale bushes, if you're having the imagery captured next year or the next year, or even in the future. So even if they plant the bushes this year and maybe the bushes are captured this year, and say it spells out Warren Central High School, and the bushes, you know, might be what, 2 or 3 feet tall, and they could be captured this year, but in the next go around, they will have grown 3 to 4 years. So that will be fun to watch too. Down in near Santa Claus, Indiana, the very kind of center picture at the bottom, a gentleman had created a pattern in his field. So I don't really know enough about who that might be, but again, that's a lot of work and a lot of fun. But several schools, especially our more rural schools, have green spaces, and you may be able to work with the maintenance folks to spell out something in the prairie or in the grass that hasn't been cut all winter and most likely won't be cut for a while, but maybe between now and before the image is captured, they would have you create a design. So the students could create a design based on some existing, pointillism or some sort of art concept, and then have that scaled up and put into the field. The kind of the swirl image is, again, just some rocks that somebody put in, and actually that's up near Chicago. And I thought that was very attractive. So and that's very doable for most people. Get some donations of logs or rocks or other natural pieces in the environment that can withstand the weather, and the students could paint them and create some artwork based on what kind of shape they're interested in. This other one here to the left of that picture with the rocks in the woods, that also is at the Wellfield Botanical Gardens, and they've put down patterns of rocks, just kind of woven them through the landscape. And that could be interesting if your school property has existing space. The field with the blue and white lines, or the parking lot with the blue and white lines, I thought that was neat. And I interpret that as a river. I'm not really sure if that's what it was meant to be, but I thought that was really interesting way to do that. And that's actually a parking lot. And then there's Mr. Bones from the Indianapolis Museum of Art, not the Brownfields, not Brownfields.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of it.
Yeah, something like that.
Newfield.
Indianapolis Museum of Art.
Yeah.
Thank you, Newfields. I'm thinking field. Thank you. So that's always fun. And he's very large. And that, again, could be replicated at the school, something similar. Maybe the mascot, do a shape of a mascot and do something interesting like that. Okay.
We have some more samples too that might be a bit more feasible. Those other ones are kind of ambitious, but we got, US maps on the parking lot or the playground.
Yeah.
I like this picture with the kids because it kind of gives you an idea of the size, but
yeah. It's cute, and you can do any color you want. And there is special blacktop paint and a lot of the schools I know usually get a local source to donate that paint. So, but having volunteers come in to help paint that, to make sure it's painted neater than maybe a group of elementary school kids might have, but have the kids involved with the adults would be great. And that's usually what happens. There are templates that you can buy, stencils, and there are some reusable stencils. So I am wondering about GENI buying one of those kits. So we'll see, and then loan those out, and then we can have a lot of maps around on playgrounds. So that's always a benefit.
I think the one in the top left is in Indiana, right?
Yes. Yeah. Hamilton Heights.
Yeah. One thing I do want to add in is that even if you don't have the time to complete this year, like if we're coming through your area, it might be a good resource to still collect and information. That way you can kind of share with your district of beautification, right? So like this is kind of what other areas look like. This is what our area looks like. What can we do for beautification around our school? So like when you're physically there, you can see it, but then also from above, really getting that good visual look for your school or community, it's just really nice to see over time how things have developed and become just, very communal and beautiful So it's, with us grants or funding or just, kind of reaching out to your area of like, look at what something really cool we could do that would bring a lot of pride to our school, to our community, and things like that.
A great point.
Yep. And that's exactly right too. I mean, that's a huge benefit to the whole project.
So I will move on to the state process, how we actually get this imagery. I think I'll let Sean take over at this point.
All right. Thanks, Dan. So yeah, there's many parts to these projects, and the first is that
I can't hear Sean. Okay.
Oops.
Oh, I can hear you. Don't worry.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. There we go. Yeah. So just to spend a few minutes talking through the program, so you get an understanding from the beginning to the end, and how it works. But first, an organization needs to identify their needs, right? So that's is it leaf on? Is it leaf off? What are the ground conditions going to be? And then also the resolution, and also the bands. So we always think of just limiting our idea of imagery to what we see, and that's the red, green, blue spectrum and Kathy spoke of this earlier with that near infrared. And then there's also many more multispectral bands that can be collected. So and then allowed for interpretation and analysis later with the imagery. So, and then we also have this time around our collection involves the LiDAR. I'm going to focus on imagery because that's what folks are going to be able to see in the picture, right? But anyway, yeah, our elevation data set that we're collecting is about the highest you can achieve, really, for the project, and that's 8 points per square meter, and we'll end up with a vertical accuracy of 10 centimeters, so right around about 4 inches. You think about that, to be able to go anywhere in the nation, or in Indiana at least, and have this resolution and vertical accuracy for elevation is just amazing.
Yeah.
So, all right, at least for us old folks. So, hey, all right. So the next part is planet, right? So we've got to think about how we're going to lay out this data, and we need to think about the flight line widths. If the imagery is how much overlap we're going to need, and things like that. So that's kind of the point behind this, and then we also oftentimes think of just flying our orientation either north, south, or east to west. And I like this screenshot up here in the Lake Michigan Coastal Program data set that, it requires multiple directions of flight lines. So, and it's something to think of, prior to this, is that there's a whole host of sensors that kind of drives what the project plan is going to look like. And there's there's frame-based cameras, which is what we're always thinking of when we snap a picture with our now camera phone, but for the sensors, there's a kind of a push broom technology that was kind of like just constantly collecting data as it was flying along on the flight path, and then there's that push that frame-based sensor. So each of those comes with benefits and some ways that we need to work around in terms of providing this data. So all right, go drop to the next slide. So here we need to control it, and this is where our product starts taking a step above other products such as satellite data, other aerial collections that folks do, the Google imagery, oftentimes there isn't any control on the ground that takes that extra step. So with the imagery that's collected, there's the GPS and IMU, inertial navigation information that's available to tie the photography together and to place it. But we also use ground control to so you can see here we have a GPS station there on a visible feature that isn't going to move, right? It's hard concrete and it's nice and distinguishable. So you can see on the map across the entire state how we've densified our collection of ground control. All right. And now we're on to just waiting for it. So now we've done all the planning, we've done all the flight lines, and here we are just waiting. So the things that we need to wait for, and again, this kind of draws our product apart from others, is that we are going to wait for the 30-degree sun altitude. So we wait for that sun to get 30 degrees in the sky, and once we get into about the 1st of February, we get about 3 hours of time within the day that this is available. So that's when the vendors start thinking about, okay, it's worthwhile to put a plane in the sky and start collecting aerial photography. They don't want to collect aerial photography for just an hour and a half a day. They want to be able to really mobilize and start collecting substantial amounts of imagery within that time. So that sun angle takes a factor in when during the season they can start. Again, we're focusing on leaf off, so that's kind of that February to the end of April, and that's when the leaves start really coming out in full force across the state. And then our ground conditions. So you can see, we don't want snow and we don't want flooding with these products. And then the sky conditions, we need a nice sunny sky, and that's to allow for that shadow to appear. And if we are absent the sun and we just have a nice, you can oftentimes have a really nice high level cloud deck and fly underneath that. The problem with that is that it really hides the ability to interpret what the features are on the ground, and it's amazing to see the difference. With woodland areas, the trees just look kind of hazy, and you really can't easily understand what is going on in that area of the photography. Likewise, buildings, or the only difference between, I like to compare, the only difference between a power pole and a manhole, other than maybe just a little bit of the size, but is the fact that you have a shadow on the power pole versus the manhole or the water main valve is just flat on the surface. So if you look at the power pole nadir directly above, you won't see any lean to it. You'll just see a dot, and then try and understand what that is. So as you're laying out projects, you could think of this will have shadow to it. So if you do elevate your project, it will have maybe a little bit more discerning, to the eye. So, all right. Go ahead, and so here we fly it, and this is where even though, so we can be using flight tracker, and so that we have the flight number, the tail numbers, and you can look at the flight and when it's flying over, and the tricky part is to not assume that you're already in the picture, because the vendor is going to choose the nadir flight over that area. So they are always wanting to make sure they're looking at the most directly vertical shot of the earth. And if you're going to take the classroom outside, you may need to be out there for an extended amount of time, because our our flight lines are about 30 minutes a flight line, and you know, to make sure that you're in. So we had the image in Hamilton County of us at the pyramids, a group of us, and we were in the preliminary data, but you know, that wasn't in the final because we weren't in that most nadir shot for that specific area. So it's a little tricky. Yeah, but anyway, so
And
that's
Sean, would you say it's accurate to say that there's a lot of overlap in the images that are taken, and then it's processed to get the optimal image by the end?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So projects are flown, you know, anywhere from about 30% a side lap to all the way to about 20%, depending on the project. So, yep. All right. And so this is the kind of the science part. So if you've got a student interested in learning math, this is where that comes into play. And you know, here is so we have the source raw individual frames of imagery and the data acquisition, and then we start that what's called AT, or aerial triangulation, and that math part. But what we're doing is we're taking that raw image, and as you can see in the image there, we're also taking the elevation model. So we have an elevation model collected from LiDAR, and then using those two to actually stretch the images across the landscape. So where you have, you know, mountains or you know, ridges, that you know, will need to stretch those raw pixels to form the correct distance. Otherwise, we'd end up with, you know, a product, if you were to measure from point A to point B, an incorrect distance, you know, with that raw data. So so that's where that ortho photography comes in as a final product that's scalable and accurate across the entire image. And here's a process that the Indiana deploys. Oh, there's Kitty. Hey. um, but this is our chance to check it. So we want to verify that the things such as seam lines, that the road or railroads, you know, are don't have any shift to them visually. So there is a tolerance that we have, and but so that's what we're always keeping that in mind. But you know, bridge decks will have a distortion to them sometimes if the DEM wasn't applied, or the image, the bridge wasn't exactly nadir. So so that can be problematic. Tonal balance, just making sure that, you know, some of the cosmetic things as well, right? It's all important in the final product because perception matters, and that's what I like to emphasize. And you know, when users are using this for specifically engineering and you know, other uses, we need to make sure that the imagery is you know, horizontally, vertically accurate, and also, you know, looks correct too. So, all right.
Hey, one more thing, just to clarify some terminology. You referred to the term nadir or nadir. I believe that just means that just means vertical, right?
Define that. Yep. Yeah. So that's what, you know, that overlap. The more overlap you have, so like for drone flights, sometimes they'll fly, you know, with maybe 60% overlap, and that's an effort. That's an effort to keep, you know, the kind of that. Throw out another term for you, true ortho. But true ortho is the idea that everything is nadir, and you know, you're looking straight down as opposed to seeing a little bit of lean to the building. So, you know, that's that, you know, when you start getting out on the outsides of the image, then you start seeing the sides of the building that I think, you know, we're all accustomed to seeing, right? And it's, I think, attractive to see some of that, although, you know, to see it in excess then starts to cover up the ground features that are in the on the opposing side of the structure. So, yep, good. All right, and then here just some last slides to going about using it, and so here's the IndianaMap, and that's where Dan in our office helps manage the IndianaMap, and also helps. I'm sorry, Ben. What am I
Hey,
saying?
no worries.
Did I do that now?
Hey, you
Yep.
can always help out. Yeah.
You switched places, trading places.
Yep.
So
But
yeah.
yeah, I would just add too that you can find all of our previous imagery through IndianaMap and our elevation models, and our most recent collection of the 3-inch imagery from last year, and then this year's collection will be here sometime probably next year. But
Yes.
yeah, if you
Speaking
explore
of
this catalog, there's lots of remote sensing data you can find.
the recent one that you just mentioned, I have a link on this slide. So I pull it into a map. So this is public, the link that is in the slide. So anyone can go and look at the 2025 imagery, just kind of play around, see what you find.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
There's a lot of different ways to access it. So this is a pretty easy way.
I always, one thing to keep in mind if you're looking at a project is to apply color, because our imagery is always collected leaf off, so things are pretty dormant, right? Pretty brown, and if you can apply color to your your layout, your project, it's going to be much more discernible.
Mhm.
Also, there is a link on this slide for the Get in the Picture website, and this dashboard that you see here is live on the website. So this will give an idea of which areas have been flown already. Right now it's none, but eventually these lines will start turning green as they get flown. So it's not instantaneous, but you can at least kind of see where they're at or what areas have been done already.
Do you think that's for people, say, well, Harrison County is usually the start point, right?
Yep,
And
right here
then,
at the bottom.
and so
Yeah.
people maybe just the next county north or northwest can kind of watch and see where Harrison County is, and then know that maybe they'll, if weather permitting, the sky, all of the conditions and the mojo is correct and positive, that maybe the next week or two that they might be flying in their county. Is that
Yes.
Sean?
Yeah. We so the flight
Roughly?
for this year is going to be starting down in Harrison and in Crawford County, and then we'll just start working our way north on those flight lines. If there's flooding, say the East Fork of the White River there in Jackson County, it gets really wet and inundated, then we'll have to skip that and come back later. So that's where it
Okay.
gets a little tricky in trying to figure out. And also, likewise, if maybe it's not the flooding on the ground, but it's a cloud deck that comes in, for that particular day on the southern part of the state, and maybe a little bit further north, upwards around Johnson County or Marion County comes clear, then they'll focus on that. So that's where it gets really hard to keep track of. It's not just a single line, a step every every
Right.
time. There's also 2 to 3 aircraft that are going to be mobilized. So the aircraft one will start on the south, and one will start about 10 flight lines or 15 flight lines north, and then they'll just start marching north. And we may bring in a third aircraft, like I said, so that'll be 3 aircraft and trying to
Wow.
figure. So trying to get actually physically a person in the picture is pretty hard,
Right.
unless you're just going to spend
Yeah.
All day.
spend some time outdoors. But yeah.
Students may like that,
So yep.
but
Field trip.
teachers, administration, parents,
You're right.
not necessarily so great.
Yep. But yeah, any ways of especially the paint on I think is a really good idea. that'll be lasting through the springtime. And again, this is from now till the end of April, and that's when in the southern part of the state, I have to say that it's much earlier than the end of April. It's really about the first or second week in first or second week in April that we'll be closing out the opportunity to collect imagery in the southern part. It's that northern part that still stays open until the end of April, and even then, things start looking pretty green by then. So.
And if they don't catch it this time, then in the next go around for the 3-year cycles. So that central strip from south to north is this year. You can see the orange. And then the eastern strip south to north will be collected next spring. And then the western strip south to north will be collected in 2028 spring. So, and then after that, we'll start over, hopefully. And then you can have something available then. We'd love to have something now, but if you need to wait, then that's completely understandable.
Yeah,
I will say, sorry, Andrea, go ahead.
No, that's fine. But for the counties that are not being collected this year, right? Like you have a whole year to think about it. Before we hit the eastern part of the state and then roll around to the western. So like you have a year to 2 years, and if you're in the central strip, you have 3-4 years before they come back. So you can really make something potential and impactful.
Right.
It's also just an opportunity to learn about it too, even if you're not interested in making something. It's kind of it's probably new for a lot of young people, especially to learn about. So
something fun, maybe encourage collaborations with a local park. I mean, there's quite a few schools that have green space, so they actually have a nature preserve on their property, and they work with the local rangers and biologists and other folks, land use management people. You can imagine with trees, the ash trees knocking down and the honeysuckle invasion. So they're collaborating with a lot of folks. And so there's some opportunity on those properties to make some aerial message, I think, too. Many years ago, this started under the Indiana Geographic, the Indiana INGISI, Indiana Geographic Information Initiative, and under Jill Salago-Simmel, and she called it Huck Finn. So it was really fun. And that's when aerial imagery was not so sharp and crisp, right? Like it is now. But several scouts and other student groups worked with a park up in northwestern Indiana, and they collected plastic milk jugs. And they were out there in freezing weather the day they were going to set up, and it was a semi-permanent installation, and they made a DNA spiral out of these milk jugs. And so they had stakes to stake them down, and they were really long and really powerful. And I could not find a picture of that. None of us could find it, but it was captured in the imagery back then. And so that was a very interesting project. And people could do something similar if they wanted to. I would love to see thousands of peace signs or the word peace. So then maybe we could send a massive peaceful message in our aerial imagery. But anyway. Education resources. Joseph Kursky on his Facebook page a couple weeks ago had this image on the left, this graphic, benefits of GIS, Geographic Information Systems or Sciences in Education. And all of these things are pertinent to being a well-rounded citizen, a good decision maker, somebody who can be employed in many fields, and you're able to gather pieces of a puzzle a spatial puzzle and bring them together in order to solve a problem or plan for the future. And that's what GIS, and that's the beauty of a geographically literate individual provides. Very few other disciplines bring all of those aspects together in such a intentional and pivotal way to be able to plan. And so by doing something with the artwork and get in the picture, you are enabling and allowing your students to also become part of that process and teaching them how to think spatially, SPATIALLY, and to be able to bring together a lot of aspects of a situation and think from a holistic perspective. There's a few education resources. Of course, this is a very short list. There are many, many more, but these are some of my favorites in terms of aerial imagery, satellite imagery, remote sensing explanations, and other resources that you could use in the classroom or at home if you're a homeschool group, or in an after-school program, or at a library hosting an event. And then we have several lesson plans. Again, these are just a few highlights that folks can access. And right now the GENI website's in a little transition, so we're getting those reloaded up onto the website. But so those will be available, and those are good. And people can always email me, and I can email you those things directly too if it's an issue, because we're not in charge always of our own technology destiny, right? That good?
Yep. Yeah. And here's our contact info, like Kathy said. Please feel free to reach out if you want more information, especially those lessons plans from GENI. Those are great. Yeah.
And anybody who's doing this for an educator, you can get professional growth points. Well, I'll be glad to send you a letter. For some people, they still require a certificate. For GISP, for your GIS professional certification, a lot of these kinds of activities can be considered service, or so the time you spend with a group or an organization possibly doing something like this, then you can count that time towards service for your GISP. And I'm hoping we can work on the LEUs, library education units for librarians. And I need to talk with my library colleagues and talk about that so that maybe there's more collaboration. I mean, I know a lot of schools around the state who are very close to a public library. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for that, especially as we're moving towards 2027, 2028, and then to the census in 2030. There'll maybe be some more activities at libraries to encourage engagement for elections. And this kind of program, and Get in the Picture, will also demonstrate why it's important for everyone to get involved. So I want to thank everybody here who has helped GENI and helping educators and always being so supportive. Thank you.
Well, thank you too. We appreciate you guys a lot. So
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Katie.